皆さんこんにちは。GHOVC の安永と申します。今、アレンマイナーさんにいろいろ企業に関して聞いているところですけれども、今日はハイアリングに関してちょっと深掘りをしていきたいと思います。We were talking about the hiring. The hiring the right person is very important. It's very easy to said and done.
Yeah, it's very easy to say.
Yeah. What is your rule of thumb? What is the order of the hiring people, assuming the audience is the person who wants to start up the company, he has a technology or whatever the product, but he wants to gather the team. What kind of advice do you are giving to those guys?
If there were one piece of advice, it's something that Larry Ellison did. It's something that Mimura-san at Concur, who built a company that's over and over again at different sizes, has been called the best place to work in Japan. And that is, first of all, do it yourself. Larry, until at least there were 1,000 or 1,500 employees, he interviewed every candidate. The students who were coming in, he interviewed every person before an offer letter was made, to 1,500 people. First, do it yourself. And what Larry Ellison used to say is that he hired people he wanted to share lunch with. If he said his main hiring criteria was if they go to lunch together and the conversation is fascinating for an hour. If he enjoys having conversations over lunch with them, that's a good hire. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. And so, of course, it's not all, but that was the key thing for him. Is this someone I'll enjoy working with for a long time? Can we have interesting interactions? Does he pique my curiosity?
Right.
So, is it a person that you want to work with for a long time? Is a very legitimate and important consideration. And so I think doing it yourself and focusing first on, does this person share my values?
Right.
Does he think and work? Can I expect him to make decisions in the same way that I would, based on his view of the world and his way of the way business and so.
But it's a little bit contrary to the diversifications. There sometimes you want someone who do not think like you do.
And you want diverse talents, but I think what you don't want is people who will make decisions in fundamentally different ways. So I think diversity in skills and talents and providing an environment where everyone's talents flourish, everyone is able to do work that they are really good at doing is important. But diversity of fundamental values and way of approaching business, I think, can be dangerous.
How about
then there's a second part about hiring, and that is that you're never done. And almost always the leaders that you're able to attract to a company when it's starting are attracted to your vision. They may be junior, they may not be terribly experienced. So one of the things that both Larry Ellison and Mark Benioff and Tom Siebel, another very successful ex-Oracle executive, did very aggressively was to they were always trying to hire replacements for their leadership team. So they were always looking for new leaders that could take over the vice president's jobs. So very, very, very active recruiting of vice president level talent forever. And so as companies grow, as the world changes, as the company grows and becomes more complex, as customer needs become more complex, the early talent. So like we talk about the CEO role, going from a 0 to 1, a 1 to 10, a 10 to 100 CEO. We don't talk enough in the venture space about a 0 to 1 team, a 10 to 100 team, 100 to a billion team. The best person for the job when you're starting a company is probably not the best person for that same job later on.
I see.
And so always thinking about what's the best team at each stage of the business. Who is ready to push the company to the next level, who is not. And of course you want to keep the people who are adding value to the team, but to not be afraid to bring someone in on top of one of your co-founders, on top of someone who is a Torishimariyaku, to bring in a new Torishimariyaku above him. That's a very hard decision personally for us. But I think the most dynamic, fast-growing startups the CEO remains very active
Right.
in building that team, and the team itself evolves as the business evolves.
I see. It's kind of interesting. So CEO has to be changed, and
The
also
CEO has to
teams
change.
has
The
to
CEO,
be
CEO has
changed.
to change, and
Yeah.
some CEOs are good at making the personal transition
Right,
to
yeah.
do bigger and bigger.
Uh-huh.
Some CEOs need to be replaced. Constantly improving the leadership team is, I think, the most challenging thing that the best startups get right. It's
Right.
really hard to do, both on a personal level.
Yes. And Japanese organizations tend to
be
stay
very
together.
stable, very stable.
Very stable.
And there's strength in that. There is
Yeah.
strength in that,
Right.
but there's also a weakness.
Okay, but do you recommend the Japanese startup to keep the status, or they need to?
Japanese startups would benefit
Right.
from more dynamic evolution of the leadership team. And I have often had conversations with startups in my career doing venture capital, asking the CEO, how would you feel if at some point we had a conversation and decided that it would be better for the company to have a new leader in its place rather than you?
Right.
But yeah, Japanese. The reason I raised that is I think Japanese startups do have a tendency to stay with the founding team forever, and I think that limits their potential over time.
Right.
But I also think there's another untapped opportunity to bring in great talent by expanding internationally. And another way to do it, not just evolving your Japan team. Another way to get some of those benefits is when you're hiring overseas to hire someone who could run your business in Japan better than you can.
Right.
If you can attract someone to help your business overseas who's a more capable leader than yourself, there's so much you can learn from them, and so few worries you will have about whether that business is successful overseas.
かなり盛り上がってますけども、じゃあ次はですね、インベスターの役割っていうところをちょっと深掘りしたいと思います。